As a Ruckus One customer, your environments are automatically taken care of from an upgrade perspective. However, when there's maintenance or upgrade activities taking place, we're going to let you know so that you can plan accordingly. So make sure that you are receiving notifications for any of the maintenance activities or firmware upgrades. You can go over to Administration, Notifications, and make sure that your recipient list is filled out correctly. You can add email addresses, mobile phone numbers, and you can have multiple users in here. So anybody that's managing the environment is able to get these updates. So the first one we're going to talk about is just maintenance scheduled. So we do have periodic maintenance windows. I'm going to bring up a message here that shows what those kind of look like. And a lot of times what you're going to see is that your networks and the WLANs attached to them continue to function. However, some of the admin functions of the Ruckus One portal may not. So if you were planning to do some changes that coincide with the time that the maintenance is scheduled, you might want to make note of when the maintenance ends before you begin your activities. The other thing that we're going to make you aware of are changes to the firmware for your devices. So we'll tell you kind of when that update is scheduled. We'll give you a time range. And typically what you'll see is you'll have an option to view the update and kind of look at the scheduled details. Oftentimes you're able to go ahead and push that update sooner than our update is taking place. But we do have a cutoff typically for some of those updates. Another way you can control those updates is from Administration, Version Management. So if you look at our AP firmware, our switch firmware tabs, under AP firmware, clicking on the Preferences tab brings up the ability to kind of change how I want to apply these updates. Right now I have them set to automatically update between midnight and 2 a.m. I can click on the Change button and I can choose a few different days and time slots that I might rather prefer for these venues. If I didn't want to do that, if I didn't want to have the same time slot for all of the venues, and again, that goes off of the venue's local time, I could change this to schedule manually. So if I was to change it to schedule manually, I would need to go into each venue and kind of customize the different time slots that I would want for these updates. The same thing goes with switch firmware. So we can go over to the switch firmware and see the same preferences tab, and we can kind of have those handled a little bit differently. If you've got different teams that are involved on the switching side versus the AP side, you can make sure that those are kind of set. And you can see here that I have that manually in my environment. The dashboard in Ruckus One is a great place to start any troubleshooting effort. It gives you a high-level indication of any trouble spots, just color-coded based on green, yellow, and red. So from my view, we can see most of my panels are looking pretty clean, but I do have some Wi-Fi clients that may need attention. The great thing about all these panels is they're hyperlinks, so you can click on them and jump to any trouble spots. So let me go ahead and jump over to Wi-Fi clients. And you can see here all of the venues that I'm managing, and we can quickly identify any devices that may be problematic. So we can see we've got a device here that has poor health, we have a device that has average health, and we can see all the details about these devices. We can see their MAC addresses, which venue they're located in, which AP they're connected to, as well as which WLAN they are joining. Clicking directly on that problematic client, we can see a lot more details about it. We can see that it's pretty much only operating on 2.4 gigahertz. We can see the breakdown of the good, average, and poor performance indicators over the last 7 days, and we can currently see what the SNR and RSSI of this device is. So my guess is that this device is actually on the edge of coverage, and based on the number of frames dropped, it's not doing so well. So that's why we're flagging this particular device. We're not exactly sure what OS this is, but if this is a device that we could move closer, we would want to do that. Or if there is an ability to provide better coverage to the area where this device is, we would maybe want to go that route. Also from the clients list, notice that we have a diagnostics panel that we can access. So from here, if we wanted to troubleshoot an issue maybe that a client was having joining the network, we could specify the MAC address of that client, which venue the client is in, and then select the AP that the client is trying to connect to. Once we do that, if we choose to trace the connectivity, and then we have that particular device try to disconnect or reconnect to the access point, we can actually see the connection details here. So we can see that
Initially, it deauthed, and then it had an authentication response request. It did the four-way handshake. It did the DHCP discover, offer, request, and act. So at this point, we've got a fully connected client. But if there was an issue with that connection at any point in this process, we can kind of see where that might have been occurring. So, for instance, if there was a DHCP issue, it wouldn't have made it past the DHCP portion, or if there was an authentication issue for this particular WLAN and it was externally authenticated, we could have seen that at AAA or LDAP or Active Directory. If we wanted to troubleshoot things from an AP perspective, we could head over to Wi-Fi access points and check out the AP list. We can see all of the APs for all the venues that we manage, and clicking on any of the AP names will take you directly into more details for that specific AP. So here you can see a lot of information. Right at the top here, we see that there's no active alarms. There is one incident. We have 97% connection success for the clients that have connected to this AP. It's taking them 369 milliseconds on average to connect, and we've got a 99% client throughput percentage that we're meeting. We got some actions that we can perform for this AP. If we click on more actions, we can reboot this AP, we can download a log, or we can turn the LEDs on and off so we can identify this AP. If we needed some physical assistance on locating it, we can certainly do that. Also, under the AP properties, if we click more here, we can slide this out and we can get some additional detail. One thing I want to point out here is the admin password that we can unhide. We can actually log into this particular AP via PuTTY and access the command line directly for this AP. You do need this admin password to do it, so you would log in with admin and then whatever password is shown here, and this is going to be venue specific. Closing out of the AP properties, there's a lot of information you can view on the overview tab that is specific to this AP. I will say that a lot of these tabs are filtered on the time view that is up in the top right. So most of the stuff that we're going to look at is based on the last 24 hours. The timeline tab is going to have things like configuration changes that are done on the AP, as well as events that occurred with the AP, like reboots and things like that. The clients tab is going to show you clients that are associated with that AP based on which network they're connected to. You can see which networks are being broadcast by this AP from the networks tab. The reports tab is a little more detailed than the overview tab. It's going to have, again, that AP specific information, traffic totals, traffic trends, top applications, things like that. So you can get all the information from this AP's perspective. Session information is another good one that you can obtain right from here. The neighbors tab is going to show you from an RF neighbors perspective what it can hear out in the environment. So we're seeing that we hear this other AP, we can see what channel it's on, and we can get a signal to noise ratio for that AP to determine, are we too close, are we not close enough, things like that, are we overlapping, and we get that breakdown for all of the radio bands available. The LLDP neighbors is from the perspective of the Ethernet connection. So on this 770, we are connected to our 7150. We are connected on port 114, and it looks like we're at power class 4 at 25.5 watts. So we can kind of get some information about that as well. From the troubleshooting tab, we've got ping, we've got trace route, and packet capture. I will say from the ping and trace route perspective, we are doing this from the management connection. So if you've got multiple WLANs on different VLANs, just keep in mind that these pings and trace routes are going over the management connection. They're not necessarily an indication that your WLANs are going to be able to reach those same destinations. The packet capture is available from an AP perspective, so you're able to look at 802.11 information from a Wireshark or a PCAP file. You can select which radio band that you want to capture over, and you're going to be limited based on what your AP can do. So this AP is able to do 6 gigahertz as well, so that's why we're seeing it in the list. But you can select the capture interface. You can choose to filter the capture based on a MAC address. So if we wanted to hone in on a specific client, we could put that client information in here. It would only grab information where that client is concerned. We can then further filter out based on management frames, control frames, or data frames. So depending on what you're really looking for, you can kind of choose all three, or you could really limit it down to just one of those three types. So again, this is going to give you a PCAP file that you could then analyze. The Ruckus AI Analytics tab is going to be available to those who additionally subscribe to Ruckus AI. For Ruckus One customers, I do believe you get 90 days of free analytics, so you might have this already, but it's going to give you really good information in terms of incidents and health. So this is our AI platform that's able to look at all of the information within your network and start correlating events and then surfacing incidents when it finds them. And you can see from the perspective of this AP, we do have one incident listed where we are running this AP in low power mode. If I jump into this particular incident, we can get some more details regarding it. Scrolling down, we can see exactly kind of what's going on here. So our 770 is only operating at 802.3 AT mode, which is that 25.5 watts of power. This particular AP needs 40 watts of power at its peak to operate at maximum capacity. So when we're in low power mode, we're doing things like disabling some Ethernet ports, USB ports. We're also running our radios at lower power. So we really need to be careful and make sure that, if we want to run them in low power, that's fine, but that does impact coverage. So we might be thinking we've got coverage somewhere, but we're running at low power, so we actually don't. So you can run into issues with that. And again, we just looked at the AP's LLDP neighbor and saw that we were connected to that 7150, who's only able to give me 25.5 watts. So if I wanted to run this specific AP at the correct power level, I would have to connect it to a device that is capable of doing that. The switch list displays all of the switches that are managed by your Ruckus One instance, broken out by venue. Clicking on any of the switch names takes you directly into that switch-specific detailed information. A lot of this information is based off of the time range in the upper right-hand corner. The More Actions drop-down is similar to what we saw on the AP side, but we do have the ability here to initiate a CLI session directly from the UI. So if you are a person that is used to CLI commands, you can go ahead and log in this way and be able to access your CLI information, make configuration changes, and save them here. The configure button does allow us to change some information about this device. If we wanted to reconfigure the management addressing, we could do that here. If we wanted to enable jumbo mode, we can do that as well. And since this device is running route code, we could add static routes directly from the configure button. We would just add the route and choose apply. The panel tab gives us a quick visual indicator of the port status. So we can see which ports are online, which ports are uplink, and which ports are supplying PoE power. If we hover any of these ports, we're able to see a little bit more detail. And if we click on the port, we're able to edit that port directly. So we could change some of our port VLAN information. We can enable and disable the port itself. We can enable and disable PoE for the port. We can change the PoE port class. We can set up spanning tree. We can change some of the ACL information and things like that. So if you wanted to edit a specific port and you didn't want to do it through the CLI, you might be able to find the setting here to do so. The Ports tab gives you a breakdown of all of the ports on the device and shows the admin status, the connected speed, the PoE details, as well as VLAN and tag information. If your device is running router code, you are able to see your routed interfaces, and any VEs that you may have configured will be displayed. The VLANs tab also shows the configured VLANs for the device, as well as which ports are tagged or untagged for those VLANs. The tabs at the top are not unlike what we already looked at when we talked about the APs. I will highlight the Troubleshooting tab. So again, we do have the ping and the traceroute tabs available for the switches, but again, this is from the perspective of the management interface. So if you do have different clients that are on different VLANs, these traces and these pings are going to be to establish the management connectivity, not necessarily connectivity within those VLANs. We also have the ability to display the IP route table. So again, since this device is running router code, we have an IP route tab. We can look at the table, and we showed earlier how we could input additional routes directly into our route table through the UI.